think such conversations are so necessary. I'm doing all right. Thankfully, the rain has calmed down, so you'll be able to hear me, but I'm doing okay. Thank you for having me.
Incredible. Thank you so much, Bulelwa, for making time for us this evening. It really means a lot to us as a family. And I think as South Africans as a whole, like you said, it's important to have these conversations and to open the dialogue about yeah, gender based violence and femicide. And we are in 16 days of activism right now against violence of women and children. But yet we are mourning as a nation. And we've been mourning. It's not like we are only mourning now. And I think I love what Women for Change stands for. The fact that, you make us aware of what is happening, the true terrifying stories of women being killed, women being kidnapped, children being abused and killed. So the work that you do is absolutely commendable. Especially because we have such a long way to go in South Africa. But yet, organizations like yours are saying, look, here we are pioneering this and wanting to be the change that we want to see in our society. So I'd like you to briefly introduce yourself, the role that you play at Women for Change, and also what Women for Change, stands for in the community. What is it that it brings to our communities, and just the reason of establishment of Women for Change.
All right. Thank you so much. Well, my name is Bulelwa Adonis, and I am the spokesperson for Women for Change SA. Yeah, basically, I'm the person that handles all of the conversations, any dialogue, any interactions with journalists, with any other activist, any other individual that wants to be educated in a conversational manner. I'm the person that I guess deals with that type of thing. Why was Women for Change established? So, what provoked our founder to start Women for Change in back in 2016 was when a teenager was running in a very popular running place,
Mm.
and unfortunately she was murdered. And I think that was the last straw for her. And I love what you said at the very beginning, that not only are we mourning now, but we have
Mm.
been mourning for a very, very long time.
Mm.
And I think that just provoked our founder to say, you know what? Awareness for gender-based violence and femicide needs to be had. And she started Women for Change. And yeah, since then we have been creating awareness. Little did we know we would become an organization that would always also share like just snippets of the news that has to do with gender-based violence or femicide,
Mm.
and also, be a safe haven for victims, for survivors, and to a point where the community members trust us enough to share their loved ones' stories, to share people who are missing, children who are missing. So yes, it essentially started back in 2016 when a teenager was murdered when she was on her run. So I think it started then, and since then, I think the urgency of it is something
Mm.
that keeps us going. That's the ignition to our fire.
Absolutely. And I think that, your work doesn't stop because there's constantly something that is happening when it comes to gender based violence. Now, can you explain to us GBVF? In layman's term, so someone that has perhaps never heard this before, they can have a deeper understanding of what it means.
So to try my best to summarize it, although I can't summarize to save my life, but gender-based violence essentially is any form of violence or abuse, be it emotional, financial, sexual, yeah, I think I mentioned most of them,
Mm.
that is perpetuated onto another individual. And in a country like ours here in South Africa, that is mostly, in terms of statistics, that mostly is targeted towards women and children. And yes, femicide is essentially the same thing. It's just I would say, to summarize it for short, it's just targeted violence towards women
Mm.
or females.
Thank you for that, Bulelwa. Now, Bulelwa, we are in 16 days of activism in South Africa against women and against the violence of women and children. We're commemorating that. What does that mean to us? What does that mean to organizations like yourselves and also to members of our communities?
I think 16 days of activism was intended to bring awareness to this pandemic that we have. I think that's the only way I can describe it. To gender-based violence and femicide. And I think it was created so that we can have these conversations, so that we can stand up for what is right. It looked the way our leaders are handling it. It seems like this is something that's going to be with us for decades to come. And I think the essence of this was to bring awareness, and I hope the awareness was intended to bring a change. But from what we've seen is that only in these 16 days do people feel the need to become interested in the conversation. All of a sudden, people feel the need to be in the spotlight, to march, to protest, to put up their banners, and all these different things. And honestly, with the statistics constantly rising, with people still being murdered and kidnapped and missing, it's not making much of a difference, honestly. It's just 16 days out of 365 days, and weighing that out, it's not much.
I hear what you're saying. I think more needs to be done. We can't be having these conversations, even as media, only during this time. It has to be an ongoing theme, throughout the year. Like you're saying, Bulelwa, I absolutely agree with you there. Bulelwa, some of the highlights of the organization, Women for Change, I know that earlier on you did speak about some of the work that you do, but something that really stands out, or a couple of things that stand out for you in terms of the work of impact that you've done in the communities.
Sure. Um, I think the best person who would answer this question would be our founder. But from my perspective, in terms of the time that I've spent with Women for Change, I think first and foremost, it's recognizing that we are able to empower victims and survivors. I think when if you had to read some of the DMs that we get, see the pictures that we get, and how distraught, triggered, traumatized, scared, overwhelmed, confused some of the people are that message us. And I think there's a lightness that some of them feel when they speak to us, knowing that, I think because a lot of them don't have the privilege to share what they've gone through with anyone. I think the trauma has bound them to feel like they have nowhere to go, no one to speak to. And, with a country like ours and a society that's normalized things like victim blaming and victim shaming and all of that, it's organizations like Women for Change where people feel like it's one of the very few safe places, which is heart-wrenching. But I think just the knowledge of knowing that we are empowering the people that speak to us, and that another thing that I would say as a highlight is we have a virtual race that takes place every day, every year, annually, and every year, yes. And even now, anyone can, whoever wants to join, can just go to our website or Instagram page. But basically, I think what I've been seeing, especially as of late on social media, before I joined, I saw how the organization that we are in partnership with, which is Catch Me If You Can, seeing how on every single day the runners, and particularly this year was in Sandton, the runners are in Sandton, but the virtual race means you can run from any place. But I think this year there's been a particular group of women that have decided to run together. And I think it's been a highlight to know that every day one of our fellow sisters that we have lost has been commemorated. So meaning her story lives on, her legacy lives on, that despite the fact that we have lost a soul so tragically, that they are still remembered. I think that's why it's so important to us that we not only post their pictures, but we name them, because their names are important. I mean, on the media, when we see the statistics every 3 months or something, we only see stats, we only see numbers, when really they are behind every number was a life. So I think that's something that's very important to us, and I think our virtual race is something that is a huge highlight.
Absolutely. And I love it, the fact that it's also easy, it's accessible, and one can just go online and be part of change in their
Mm,
society. And I think that's what's needed, Bulelwa, that everyone buys into
mm,
the change that is needed. Um, what are some of the just in your mind right now, the things that can be done as a society to curb, to alleviate where we are right now in terms of gender-based violence, so that we can see those stats you spoke about going down, at
mm,
least.
mm.
What do we need to do? Some people speak about, educating the male child. Is that the way forward? How long will that take? What about the male that is current now, the adult male that is a perpetrator? So, yeah, I hope that you can speak into that.
I'm so glad you used that example. I think just to start in a simpler manner, because I think most of the times people assume that change can only be done in higher places, which to some extent I do understand because we only have so much power, as
Mm,
citizens. But I think I've said this one too many times in interviews that we call ourselves the Rainbow Nation as South
mm,
Africans, but I think that um we've lost the human aspect to be a neighbor. What
sure.
do I mean by that? I think we've
Sure.
normalized this mind your own business mentality, which to some
Mm,
extent I understand. We don't want to involve ourselves, we don't want to implicate ourselves. But looking around us, looking how maybe my neighbor is in trouble, maybe my neighbor is being
mm,
abused. I can hear the cries, I can hear the shouts, but I want to mind my business. I don't know if I can buy into that mentality anymore.
mm,
Seeing how stats are rising, seeing how kidnappings and missing people are rising, and I don't think I can digest that at night. I don't think I can sleep at night knowing that I'm very comfortable in a mind my own business mentality. And I think in being a neighbor, it's simply knowing that I have my neighbor's back. And your neighbor doesn't necessarily mean directly the person living next to you.
mm,
It speaks to the greater community.
mm,
Where has the compassion gone? Where have we lost our compassion for one
mm,
another?
mm,
Why is it that in order for us to care for someone, why does it have to be our sister, our mother, our child, our son, our brother? Why does it have to be someone in relation to us? When did we get to that point?
mm,
How are we still calling ourselves the Rainbow Nation when we seem to dilute that on a daily basis?
mm,
Because I think, as if we're being honest, I think most of us as South Africans have gotten to the point where if we turn on the news, we expect a bad
mm,
news headline. We're numb to it. It's so normalized to us that we're like, oh, another person is gone, another person
mm,
is missing.
mm,
And I don't want to shame anyone because of how it reoccurs so often in our country. I just think that in order for us to not lose I guess that shock or that urgency to do something is just starting with being a neighbor. And what do
mm,
I mean by that? I mean, let's have conversations. Why are we keeping quiet when somebody's being gaslighted? Why is it that
mm,
we're still remaining friends with a perpetrator?
mm,
That's another thing. I think that there's a book that I'm reading. It says rape, and it unpacks the reality of what's going on in this country.
mm,
And I think at the very beginning, it speaks of, I think it was the writer was making reference to an interview. I think it was with two sexual offenders, with two, I
mm,
don't know if it's serial rapists, or I'm not sure. I can't remember correctly, but I think when they were asked the question of why they keep doing what they do, what they've done, what they've been implicated for, is because they say that nothing changed. And that
mm,
stood out to me so much. What that means is association. They didn't lose friends.
mm,
They didn't lose,
mm,
their social setting didn't change. People didn't treat them differently. Yes, maybe some may have looked some type of way, but in terms of their norm, their
mm,
circle, it didn't change. So they didn't feel the need to feel some type of way. And if we buy into that and actually recognize that,
mm,
let's remove ourselves and isolate the perpetrator so they can see that there's something wrong with their behavior, something wrong with their mannerisms, because this association with them, we're basically telling them that, it's okay. I'm still your
mm,
friend no matter what.
mm.
When really, if you want to be the friend of that says no matter what, why are we not calling them out? Why are you not saying that is not right? What you did was rape. That joke wasn't funny. Why do we still have this mentality of, these locker room chats, these group chats where we're still sending solicited pictures, of each other's crushes or lovers, and still talking so foully of each other. It's simple things like having conversations, and to whoever's listening that assumes that they need this huge platform, many followers. No,
Mm.
you have access to at least one person that cares about what you say. And that
Absolutely.
that person in your life, be it a family member, be it a friend, whatever the case may be, you have influence over that person.
Mm.
Meaning just having this conversation and seeing and just saying, okay, let's look at this country. And even if it starts in 16 days and say, okay, this is
Yeah.
what 16 days is about. This is what gender-based violence is, and let's educate one another. Or this is what I'm feeling. This is what happened to me, and actually unpacking and
Mm.
recognizing that, oh, this is what happened to you. This is what it is. This is how we can help one another.
Mm.
I think we really underestimated um, little things like that, having conversations, looking out for one another, believing victims. We've seen as an organization in most cases and how they explain their stories to us, how people, they're almost immediately ridiculed. We
Mm.
see it as we go to the police station. We're already
Yeah.
ridiculed, like, what
Mm.
are you doing? People almost the police officers almost undermine you. Then you go to the hospital. On the other hand, I remember
Mm.
someone I knew a while ago. I think there was a rape kit that was being conducted, and how in one it's so invasive. The process is so invasive, but just the coldness and the nastiness, and I
Yeah.
guess the judgment of the
Mm.
nurses. So I
Mm.
think it's also just I've heard this term before, sensitivity training. And for me, I think
Mm.
sensitivity training simply means being a human being that cares about other individuals that have gone through trauma. You know what I mean? I don't
Mm.
know why we don't have to put on big labels. I think we just need to be compassionate to one another once again.
Mm.
We have normalized the system that in the police station we're going to be judged.
Mm.
In the streets, in our communities, we're going to be judged. Family members are going to judge us. Maybe friends are going to
Mm.
judge us. Let's simply believe victims. Let's start there. Let's hear them out. Let's give them an ear to listen. And let's believe them. Let's stop shaming one another. If anything, if needs be, let's correct or let's help one another. you
Mm.
know and I think it goes in a more broader
Mm.
extent, is like you mentioned, the educating. I
Yeah.
think not just the male child. I think that
Mm.
anti-gender based violence education needs to be implicated into our schooling systems, and not
Mm.
not in high school, from a
Mm.
young age.
Mm.
From a very young age, we've seen stories. One story that continues to shock me, that I saw, that we posted about, was these 10-year-olds that these 10 to 13-year-olds that raped these girls that were under 10 years old.
Mm.
And if our children can become predators, it tells us that this is the behavior that we've normalized. This is the
Sure.
behavior that we are teaching our youngsters. So I
Mm.
think it's very important that we educate each other, not just in schools. Let's have these conversations at home. Let's not be those family members that keep quiet and
Mm.
kind of just brush off the fact that uncle acts a certain type of way. Let's acknowledge
Mm.
someone's pain.
Mm.
Let's call out people for who they are, whether it's your friend, whether it's your uncle, whatever the case may be, because and I think also calling things for what they are. I
Mm.
think we've adopted it. I think especially as the media, I know that maybe the role that you guys play is to sanitize things to some extent, but
Mm.
my question is, how often are we going to sanitize things? How often are we going
Mm.
to downplay the reality of what's going on in our
Mm.
country? I
Absolutely.
understand that, like, for instance, our Instagram page is not easily digestible. I think it's
Mm.
rather provocative.
Mm.
It's not something that you want to see,
Every
and I think
day.
it might
Mm.
ruin. Exactly. But honestly, we also don't want to post every day, but that's our reality.
Mm. Yeah, Bulelwa, I absolutely agree with you. It needs to be that loud in order for it to begin to change and in order for it to stick into people's minds. It needs to be repetitive, it needs to be consistent, and we need to see those images. We need to see those young girls that are lost, that are kidnapped. I think one thing that
Mhm.
really caught my attention was the story in Bloem, where one girl was found, I believe, dead, and then two other girls within the Bloemfontein area are currently missing. They've been kidnapped. So I was, it's shocking. But we need to speak about
Very
it, and it needs to be out there. So I think, like you're saying, also within our communities, let's be more compassionate, and let's handle things with a little bit more empathy, and go back to the spirit of ubuntu that we have,
exactly.
especially as Africans. We know what ubuntu is about.
Mm,
Our mothers, our
absolutely.
fathers, used to take in people into their homes, and yeah, people that were in distress, at that back in the day. And I think now it's even better because there's knowledge, there's access to, places where one can get the assistance. So
Yes.
sometimes it's not about just keeping quiet, but it's also about providing that person with the access and saying, listen, this is what you can do. Let's call the police,
Mm,
because this has happened to you. And then you
mm.
can go to a shelter. There are places to go to. Yeah, Bulelwa, I think the next thing now for you is to share your details as Women for Change, and also just speak maybe a little bit about, what you hope to achieve in the next years, getting those stats down.
Well, you guys can find Women for Change on Instagram, on Twitter or X, and on TikTok, on Women for Change SA. Yeah, just that. That's our handle on all social media platforms. And then I think if people want to directly message me, because usually our DMs are flooded.
Ah.
You guys can find my handle somewhere on the Instagram page, but it's underscore Adonis dot Lelwa. Yeah, and then yeah, that's how you can find me personally. If our DMs are too full on Women for Change, we're not ignoring anyone. It's just we deal with a lot of people.
Mm.
Um, and also on our website www.womenforchangesa.co.za, you can find all of our information. You can find our toolkit where there's a rape kit included, meaning you can help someone who's been raped. You can all of the information necessary on
Mm.
our Instagram page. There's a glossary that can teach you all of the knowledge, all the information, the vocabulary necessary that needs to be used in this conversation. You can all
Mm.
find it there and share it amongst yourselves, so just so we can educate one another and ourselves.
Absolutely.
What goals do we have? I think the aim of just the back to basics, why this organization was created. I think
Mm.
to not just create awareness anymore, we need to eliminate
Mm.
gender-based violence. And I think our hope is, one, to not only make people known of this, but for people to get to a point where this is no longer a comfortable reality for them.
Mm.
We want
Yeah.
to get to a point where
Mm.
we've provoked people to a point where, just like what happened in 2019, where as a country, that was the first and only time I
Mm.
saw in my lifetime, I saw our whole country stand still. I
Mm.
saw our whole country look at this pandemic for what it
Eliminate.
is and say, exactly, and say enough is enough.
That's
And I
enough.
pray that we get to that point and not move past it anymore.
Yeah.
Let's demand something, let's, as a country, let's get to that point again and just, stand up.
And demand change, and rightfully so.
Absolutely.
Let's change the narrative and let the stats go down. We don't want
Mm.
to be having these conversations in, the next years to come. A woman for change should no longer
Absolutely.
even exist. You know what I mean?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Gosh.
Bulelwa, thank you so much for your time, for sharing with us, and just for the enriching conversation that we've had. It's definitely, it doesn't end here. It continues. And thank you
Mm.
for availing yourself as well as as a representative, a spokesperson for Women for Change. We wish you nothing as an organization but the best, and we want to see those stats going down. And we, as ourselves, as the media, will do our best to continue having a conversation, educating people out there, making them aware of GBVF. Thank
Thank you
you,
so much.
Bulelwa.
Thank you so much.
Have yourself a great
Thank you. Bye.
evening. Bye bye.
Thank you. You too.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye. Family, there you go. It is possible for us to bring about